I called this impromptu briefing, I'm now calling it a press conference, just to report on my meeting with the President today. I know that the state media will carry the government side of the story, so I just wanted, for balance sake, to ensure that you have my contribution to that meeting. I will quickly take you through the circumstances surrounding the setting up of the meeting, and then talk to you a bit about the position that I took at that meeting today. Last week I received a letter from the President inviting me for meaningful consultation for a person to act as Chief Justice, or to perform the functions of the Chief Justice, since the current Chief Justice will be going on leave shortly. The section of the Constitution that was used, it's a section that relates to a person performing the function of the Chief Justice, not the appointment of the Chief Justice. You would recall that I took issue with the Attorney General when he spoke about advertisements for the post of the Chief Justice. The Chief Justice position is not vacant. It's held substantively by Mr. Karl Singh, who is the acting Chancellor. We never got to confirm him in that position because, as you recognize, the leader of the opposition has to concur with the President on that appointment. So I asked my former advisor and now Chief Whip, advisor to the government and Chief Whip, Gail Teixeira, to write Mr. Harman requesting a name of the person and a CV for that person. Gail Teixeira left for Region 9, so I did not receive the correspondence from Mr. Harman. So when I showed up today at the meeting, he told me he had written Gail Teixeira, and he gave me a copy of the letter he sent to her. In the letter, Justice Cummings was proposed as the person to perform the duties of the Chief Justice, and a CV was attached. But I received it at the meeting this morning. So the President indicated to me that was his nominee, and we had a discussion on the matter. The discussion surrounding issues of seniority and performance. In the exchange that we had, the Attorney General asked whether I had a nominee. And I said, no, I did not have a nominee, but I had some principles that I think we should follow in making such an appointment. That one, the person should fulfill at least two criteria. One, be the most senior judge on the bench or in the judiciary. And secondly, that a report, an objective report, should be solicited from the constitutional body, the Judicial Service Commission, about the performance of that person in office. The number of cases heard, how many decisions were written, outstanding work, disciplinary issues, etc. And that those two factors should determine who will be the acting Chief Justice. So that is where the meaningful consultation ended. The President gave me the name of his nominee. I'm not required to agree to it. He can move forward because it's just meaningful consultation. But when I was asked about my position on it, and whether I had a nominee, this was something that the Attorney General raised, not the President, because the President was clear this was his nominee. I outlined two principles that I think that should guide the selection of that person. As of this point in time, I don't know if the government consider these two issues, seniority and performance. And these are questions that can be raised by anyone else. Whilst at the meeting, the President asked me also whether we had moved in, settled in at the office of the Leader of the Opposition, and I said to him, I have not spoken much about the matter, but the assets that are in Parliament's register belonging to the Leader of the Opposition's office, that a significant amount of those assets were not handed over. We don't know where they are. And these belong to the Parliament and therefore the office of the Leader of the Opposition. That we are not requesting anything new, anything additional, but just what was there in the Leader of the Opposition office, that office. I pointed out how ministers were given 3 days to submit their computers, and now it's been 6 months since these computers that have been, some 15 of them that have been used in the opposition leader's office. We're yet to receive them. I was told that there are some people who have not yet, from the government side, submitted their computers in. And so my understanding when I spoke to our MPs and former ministers, that they'd all done this. So I asked them for a list of people who had not submitted their computers in. And maybe it's something, if I receive it from them, then once it's accurate, I will then share it with the press. But we have asked that the assets belonging to the Parliament be returned. Nothing additional, nothing new, and it's 6 months. 6 months have passed, and I think it's long enough for these things to be returned. Nevertheless, we agreed that Gail Teixeira, the Chief Whip, will meet with Mr. Harman to try to sort this out so that we'd have a fully functional office in the near future. The third issue that we spoke of is the border issue. And there are lots of, I shared opinions on several matters with the President, and he also spoke with me about his perspective on where things are going. And the meeting ended there. So I just thought I'd report on this to you, given the proclivity of the government to spin things their way. So thank you very much. But since you're here, and I'm sure that you will have tons of questions on other issues, then I did not want to convert this into a press conference, but I will answer questions on any matter that you wish.
Mr. Jagdeo, Kirk Campbell News Source. You spoke about the principles that you outlined, but you didn't say whether you were in agreement or had any objections to the president.
I had just received the nominee when I attended the meeting. So I do not know if the Justice Cummins is the most senior judge currently in the system, apart from the Chancellor, the acting Chancellor. Secondly, I don't know whether the government, in coming to that consideration, the name of Justice Cummins, sought a report from the Judicial Service Commission about performance. So I think that the media should seek to find out from the president and the office, because that's the president's nominee, how he came upon that nominee, what process was used to determine that this is the most suitable person to act now, to perform the functions of the Chief Justice. So it's a question that is best answered by the government. Since I did not have that information, I could not venture an opinion on the particular nominee, but I stated some principles that I think should govern the appointment or to perform the functions. So seniority is not just the only thing. It's not the only thing. Its performance is also very important.
Outside of that, how do you feel about the fact that it's a woman as being nominated?
Well, I think it's always good when we have gender balance everywhere, like right across our society. But we had Desiree Bernard as Chancellor of the Judiciary in the past. And she got there not because she was a woman, but because of her competence. And she was the best person to perform the functions of Chancellor at that time. So I believe that the most competent person should be selected. It's a bonus if it's a woman.
Mr. Jagdeo, follow up on the same matter. Sir, why did you submit a nominee?
Because at the meeting, the president said, "This is my nominee." The Attorney General asked. The president didn't ask me if I had a nominee, another person. The Attorney General did in the meeting. And I said, I don't have a name, but I think these principles should govern the selection. The president gave me his nominee.
And sir, could you say when Mr. Chan was appointed as acting Chief Justice, whether he was going through the process of having a report from the JSC and all that?
We sought opinion.
From the JSC?
Yes. The opinion could be formal or informal. We looked at performance, etc. We definitely did.
But not in the form of a report?
Yes.
Was it in the form of a report?
No,
or were you granted?
no. So no, not in the form of a
Why
report.
not?
Because we did not need a report. We needed the opinion, and I'm sure that if this government is interested in finding out whether this is the most suitable person, then they would have sought an opinion from the JSC or a report. A report could come either way, but I don't know if that was done. I don't know. That's why I'm not criticizing it. It might be very well that they actually did this. So I'm not, I think it's for you to find out how they arrived at the decision.
Okay. Just follow up on that. But do you have a nominee?
No, I don't have a nominee at this point in time. I'm going to try to find out on my own who is the most senior judge at this point in time. And secondly, I don't know how we'll get a report on the performance, but I would like to see, maybe the public would like to know about who is the best performing judge in this system, the most prolific in terms of writing and giving decisions, etc. Because the Chief Justice position is a critical one. And whatever you say about Mr. Chang, he has written tons of decisions. In fact, probably when we look at it, of the 50-something decisions written last year, he did over 40 of them.
Why didn't you go with a nominee? Or why your parties never look to have a pool to see who would best fit this position, given that you know
We,
this is coming up?
we are awaiting remember, this is just performing the function of. We are awaiting, we have discussions, we are awaiting the substantive appointments that we keep hearing about. Because at that point in time, we will probably have some very strong views. But now, I think there just needs to be transparency surrounding the choice of this candidate. This is meaningful consultation. The president's nominee in this process, will prevail because he has discharged his responsibility, constitutional responsibility, by consulting. He is under no obligation to have our agreement, So that is why I'm saying his choice is important. It is his choice, and we should try to seek a justification, or not a justification, an explanation from him or his office, how he came upon this choice. Yes.
Mr. Jagdeo, you guys discussed about the border issue. Did anything come up about the aircraft that is going to the South Atlantic in Region 6?
No, we
Sorry, Region 7.
no, we did not discuss the aircraft. We discussed international issues, a lot of international issues surrounding the UN's involvement in the process at this point in time, and how it could evolve because it's not a straight line process. We discussed issues surrounding Suriname. I even mentioned to the president that when I was in Brussels, I spoke with some people there to try to get the members, one of them to raise in the European Parliament with the Dutch MPs why they're not releasing or opening up their archives to Guyana, because I think it's a national task. So we discussed a lot of those issues. I don't want to give details about the discussions on the border. I don't want to give details.
About the Venezuelan aircraft, what is your take, and do you think it's something that the public should be worried about?
I think the government we should stick with the government's explanation on the aircraft. We should stick with the government's explanation.
On the same border issue, the UN, the last report we had from the Minister of Foreign Affairs was that the UN came to Guyana with no options, and then you had the president saying the resolution could take as much as 3 years. Was your position, as you said, that this process is not a straight line process being involved? How do you think we can expect a proposal from the UN anytime soon, or is it going to be around the same time frame? What do you think?
I did not want to get into details, but the current Secretary General demits office in a year. If there is an opportunity for the UN to recommend the juridical route, it has to be, I think, within the year before he demits, the current Secretary General demits office. A new Secretary General may not want to deal with this matter in the same fashion. It's a risk. We don't know. So if we can hope to have the UN involvement and support for the juridical route, I think we're acting with a time constraint and within the tenure of the current Secretary General. Beyond that, and we're in a new Secretary General, it's still an unknown, and it poses several risks and uncertainties. I don't want to go into more details about the border issue, but I shared with the President my perspectives on several issues surrounding the border, the juridical route, the Suriname border, ExxonMobil, a number of things.
Could you say, sir, what you think should be Guyana's approach to dealing with Venezuela in light of the political changes there, where the opposition now really dominates the lawmaking party?
Yeah. The opposition dominates, had a major victory in Venezuela, but the executive is still controlled by Mr. Maduro. And if we say that, because I've seen in some places calls made for us to engage with the opposition, you always have to engage in principle. I believe that we should do much more internationally in South America, in Latin America as a whole, in CARICOM, in North America. We need to go out and speak more about the strength of our case, and basically that our diplomacy is a small state diplomacy, to get that embedded in people's heads, because Venezuela is doing significant outreach. So any attempt to talk to Venezuela's opposition from the perspective of sharing information about our borders and our perspectives, that's fine. It's part of normal outreach. But there is still a government in Venezuela. What if another country comes to, say, Guyana, and starts to speak with the opposition about, matters relating or deal mainly with the opposition, where matters of foreign policy and national security are concerned. Then we'll have chaos. I was opposed to it. You'd recall that APNU had signed an agreement with Mr. Bouters, sir, when he was in opposition at that time, when we decided to go to the court on the maritime boundaries, the UN Convention on the Law of the Sea, to invoke it. And I was critical of it at that point in time, to have such a formal engagement in the form of an MOU signed there with the opposition on matters of national security and of foreign policy. We, although we're in opposition, we recognize that there is one, and we will continue to share our perspectives on many issues, and we'll disagree with the government on foreign policy and national security, but we recognize that the only legitimate authority to pursue foreign policy is the government of Guyana, as in Venezuela's case too.
But here is a situation where the opposition really has a two-thirds majority in Venezuela and can take certain actions even against the president. Don't you think it is really more than worth the while because the opposition?
That has nothing to do with the border. That's their politics internally.
And they're likely to become the next government.
Yes, well, the thing is that if they become the next government, then you have to deal with them as the main interlocutor. At this point in time, all you can do, like they have done, we have done in many cases in the past, if we want to send something about our position, get it translated, and send it to every member of parliament in the Venezuelan Congress. Every member of parliament, so they know our position.
But not to acquire their position.
Huh?
But not to acquire their position. But I'm asking not to acquire or to understand their position as it stands.
Yeah, because I think, in my view, the opposition in Venezuela has a tougher border or position on the border than the current government has. If I can judge them by their public statements or statements made by many of their leaders, that's all I can judge them on now at this point in time, because they're not the government, they have not had formal positions. But if I judge based on what members of parliament of the opposition have said publicly and what they have written about in the media, then their position, we've seen cases where almost saying that Venezuela should go to war with us, emanating from some opposition leaders. Engagement is good with everyone, but what is important is dealing with statecraft, dealing with your counterpart, which is the government of Venezuela, or the executive in Venezuela.
I just want to bring you back to Justice Cummings. You seem very nonchalant, neither here nor there. Are you still digesting the meeting before you come to?
I'm waiting for some information, but I just wanted to get this out about my position, what took place at the meeting and what I said in the meeting. And I'm waiting for some information now.
Sir, as an aside, you've been speaking out on issues of corruption and making suggestions for a better running of government, etc. Your critics liken you to the boy that cried wolf, in that your suggestions are not taken seriously, given your own draconian ruling and stance when you were in government. How do you feel, or what are your views on the topic in that they don't believe anything is,
Well, is that the official position of the Stabroek News, that the public does not believe?
Starbuck News can only speak from Starbuck News's perspective, and Starbuck News's bloggers and who are there.
So, but is that the editorial position of the Stabroek News?
Not editorial.
Okay, okay, so you're repeating what your bloggers are saying,
Yeah.
and you're elevating that to fact. Well, I think our supporters would say very differently. And there's a large group of people out there who blog elsewhere who have an entirely different position that you have. So I can't respond to bloggers. Bloggers have their own opinions. Newspapers have their own opinions. The Kaichor News has had its own opinion. The Stabroek News its own opinion. Let me say what the facts are. On the entire issue of the law to deal with assets, people's assets, we have an Integrity Commission Act. Members of the PPP have submitted over the years their statements of income and assets to that entity, following the law. The people who've been crying wolf, the same people on the other side who've been crying wolf all the time, why don't the Stabroek News or the bloggers ask them why for the past 10 years some of them have not submitted their statements of asset and income to the Integrity Commission when they are required by law to do so, and it is a criminal matter not to do so, yet they have not done it. And I don't see, why don't you ask the ministers one by one and the members of parliament there, why did you not comply with the law since you believe in so much transparency? That's the first issue. The second issue, that we have been regaled with examples of corruption by the media, particularly the media hostile to the PPP. So take, for example, the same airport project. People were told not to move, the squatters. Now they're told to move. We were told about how this contract was inflated. It was, too costly, too expensive for the country. Just read the same reports from your own, the Stabroek News and Kaichor News. So one would have thought that after the elections, here you have a corrupt project, that you would have had an audit done of the project. That audit would be made public, and if the audit showed corruption, there'd be consequences for the people who are corrupt. And if it didn't show corruption, then there'd be an apology. Okay? But what did we have? We have the government now moving ahead with the project, changing elements of the project outside of the public's eye, and the same media houses that were crying foul in the past are now in a lukewarm way commenting about these issues. Lukewarm way. So what does that lead one to conclude? Was the initial report by these media houses wrong? Or reports, were they wrong? And why aren't they so concerned about transparency now? That's the first issue. The specialty hospital. We heard two things. It's not necessary. We need to move to primary health care. We didn't need a specialty hospital, so it was a useless project. And secondly, there was corruption involved. One would have thought, again, that you would investigate the corruption, make public the report, and then if you still change, if you change your mind on the project, then you would retender it. So that is it too. So the entire months of negative report about the specialty hospital and it being corrupt by Kaicho News and Starbuck News, etc., under the PPP, we don't know now because there is no audit report. We should really get to the bottom of this. So I can go on to the many other projects that we have seen similar things on. So again, we see a new manifestation. Today's newspapers have the report from NISIL, but that report, from what I gather, the audit report, is about 70 pages. I gather there is a response to every over 200 pages long. But where is the response? The government has a duty to officially release the NISIL report and to release along with it the response by NISIL to many of these things. So what we heard is that somehow NISIL was involved in corruption at GNIC because they did not collect the money owed there. The change, I recall in 2002, when the entire private sector, the workers came to us and asked for a reduction in the lease fee. This was because 30% of it went to the workers. We said, fine. They have not paid over the years. We went to arbitration. Nagamutu was one of the arbiters. They didn't pay. We went to court. And so it's before the courts now. NISIL has an active court case to recover the money now. And suddenly we're hearing NISIL did not collect the money. But take, for example, the same Kaichor News that reported GNIC as corrupt, the transaction. Guyana Stores is the same thing. Guyana Stores, that Mr. Lal, the owner of Kaichor News, was on a director there, and it's rumored owner too, part owner of Guyana Stores. They did not have, this is a public company, didn't have an AGM for over 10 years. They have not paid the money that they're supposed to pay at privatization. NISIL has an active court case before them, with them now, and you didn't hear much about that. You don't hear, I would have hoped that they would have reported on that too. And NISIL, so all of these things, you get one side of the story, you don't get the other side. So coming back to the issue about this, if they said they were pure than Lily, and they're so, clean and they want to change things. On the 17th of this month, we will be debating a motion to make public tax payments, because we heard how the salaries had to go up because people were making large sums of money. So I think the government and the members of parliament, on our side at least, would not have any issue with making public their tax payments for the past 10 years on the salary issue. And by the way, I've seen this court case, this thing that Donald Ramatar and I filed a constitutional motion that they're trying to use that to justify basically, or to say, here is it that Jagdeo and Ramatar are trying to get more benefits and they are complaining against the 50% increase and Nagamutu salary going to $1.7 million a month. Well, that's not because Basil Williams said we're suing for large sums of money. What we have sought is a declaration that the act that was passed is unconstitutional. So I must forego, and myself and Ramatar, to prove a notion that we are not corrupt, we must forego benefits that Otter Chung enjoyed. Take, for example, the two annual tickets, the cost of the 2 tickets. Otter Chung enjoyed, Janet Jagan enjoyed, everyone, all the other presidents, that they remove now. It's not new. It was enjoyed by presidents in the past. Just to prove that we are not corrupt. And then in the same token, they take a huge salary increase and accuse us of corruption. These are entitlements, benefits that were there for presidents in the past. Even the caps that they put caps like 2 vehicles. But even in the past, it's not the caps we were worried about, because since I left office, there hasn't been more than 2 vehicles used. So even if there was no abuse of the 2 vehicles, and they put more, the cap is higher now for household staff than I currently have and had under the PPP, the cap that they put in this legislation. It's even higher than more people there than I currently have and I had. So it's not like the abuse of the caps. It is about entitlements. And so they want to deprive us of things that previous presidents had to, and now argue that, make it comparable with them obscenely after serving a month and a half in office, taking this huge increase. And by the way, if you have a chance to look at a circular that they sent out on June 6th, almost 3 weeks after they took office, a week after the inauguration, you will see how they change the per diem policy of the government. It's totally obscene. The president in the past got the same per diem in travel as a public servant got, $325 a day or something like that. The staff of the office would account for it. The president and prime minister now, according to that circular, has unlimited travel allowance for themselves and spouse. Unlimited. In the past, when the president travels, he gets an envelope with the same amount of money, $325 a day, as a public servant would get. That's category 1. Category 2, you have ministers now. The per diem has increased to, I think, $425 for North America and $500 a day for Europe, from $325. And it says ministers and advisors do not have to seek an advance anymore, meaning that if you seek the advance, which you used to do in the past, you have to clear the advance, account for it when you get back, that this expenditure will be treated as a final charge on the accounts. So once you get the $500, you don't have to account whether you spend it or not, unlike the past. And it goes on. So when you think that it was just the 50% salary increase that they took, and not just 50%, some is more than 50%. We keep using 50%, but some it's much more they took. You think it's only that. 2 weeks after, or a week and a half after the inauguration, they changed the per diem policy that we have had for 23 years, where the president gets the same rate as the public servant. If you send a cleaner abroad, that is it. Now they have a staggered category. Public servants have gone down now to a category D, and they have another way of accounting. So it is this. So take away Jagdeo's benefit that he has earned, coming back to the point, you know, but which I've served as 12 and a half years as president. I probably did things. I got debts written off. I changed things. The Norway agreement brought money into this country. Nagamutu spent a week and a half, didn't do anything yet. They haven't done anything, brought in a cent, but they have increased all their benefits, their money, etc. At least you can say these chaps work to change a few things. You know, get rid of the debt, bring in some money to the country. They have not done anything, and then take away benefits from us that were enjoyed in the past, and we must not say anything. We're using the courts. We're not going to beg them to, because I think they want us to go and beg and grovel. You know, we can live without this, but we're not going to allow them to take away rights and benefits that we have earned, and that presidents as far back as Otto Chung got, as far as back.
So tell you a follow-up to Marcus this. Really?
Yeah.
And it's a pointed question, taking away all of the frills.
Mm.
Do you consider yourself a credible messenger in the eyes of the broad masses of man?
Yes. Yes, I do.
Why?
I just told you I do. Yeah, I do. And as the days pass, more and more, I'm going to be justified as the days pass. And long before the term of this government ends, PPP, people would be, one, because things are getting bad and it get worse, people want the PPP back. Secondly, our management would look like a manual for good governance, in spite of all the charges that you are making now. Our governance would look like a manual for good governance compared to what they have started and they will continue to do. I just heard from the regional chairman for Region 3, and he said to me that they have already, remember I'd spoken about tender boards? So they have now 2 persons from AFC and 2 from APNU on the tender board over in Region 3, and 1 from the PPP. And already the contracts, they're using a 3-code system. So under 500,000, they're giving out lots of contracts to their people. That just, but we'll come to that next year. Next year, we'll talk a bit more about that, because there's so many things. I don't want to overload the system now with all of these things. But as I said before, it would look, the PVP tenure in office would look like IMF manual for good governance, financial management.
So then,
Yeah.
I just have one question then. Do you then think that you should be engaging some of the same persons that were very critical of you in the media, analysts, critics, whoever, to kind of assist in your credibility?
I don't, the media, and especially the hostile media, will never have an interest in enhancing Jagdeo's image, the hostile media. Never. But I don't need it. The hostile media.
Who is the hostile?
Well, you know, I'm not going to say that today, but there is a hostile media there, and people know. People are not stupid in this country. But my credibility is underground. I see tons of people from the business community coming to meet with me now to say they're clueless about what they're doing. On economic stewardship, I think we can lay out a plan tomorrow, if you ask us in the PPP, that would see a reversal of the economic fortunes of this country. We have clarity, that brings credibility. What brings credibility is we have clarity on the environmental issues. I see it was so pitiful to see Trotman claiming the 5C's agreement. The 5C negotiated the thing. He sat there, witnessed it, and then said he is happy with the confidence in Guyana and all sorts of things, as though he participated in it. But he did not. He did not, and secondly, even if he did, you get excited over a 6 million euro project for 5 years. 6 million euro divided by 14 countries in CARICOM and divided by 5 years. If you divide it first by 14 and then by 5, you probably get about 85,000 euros, $100,000 a year per country if you do it straight line. He gets excited about $100,000 a year per country. That's less than what Nagamutu makes in a year. And this is the big news coming out of Paris. You know, the big news, he had to say something about it. And we are foregoing putting at risk a $250 million US dollars agreement with the possibility of negotiating another agreement for another 5 years for over more than $250 million more. $500 million. And Jordan is all over the place because at the end of the day, they had to agree to a fact-based assessment of the hydro. So he said, oh, we still are concerned about the cost. He is clueless because I keep asking one question. And I don't understand why they don't answer the question. How much will it cost GPL to generate the same amount of power that we will buy from a miler for $2 billion in 20 years? If you go to 2012 prices, it will be at least $4 billion. We'd save $2 billion US dollars, 400 billion Guyana dollars in 20 years. Why doesn't he answer that? He must have an answer. The answer is there. The IDB did his studies, but he doesn't want. He keeps speaking about these things. So that is what came out. I saw the pathetic report that came out, the hedging, fudging, and the truth. But right now, I think they had to promise the Norwegians that you will have a fact-based assessment of a miler, not a political-based assessment, because it's too important for this country. And that will precede anything before they can get the 80 million. That is what I believe happened. He needs to come out and be clear about it.
Mr. Jagdeo, very quickly.
So that, by the way, so that will bring credibility to us. A clear crime, we can talk about the climate policy. That brings the economy. We can deal with new projects, etc. This is what brings credibility in people's eyes. Not the talk of credibility. And so I believe we are an extremely credible party based on our track record of change in this country. That in spite of all the difficulties, we moved this country forward. They were excited, people were investing, people were getting more jobs. Now the reverse has happened. And they can't see that. If you listen to them, they still think they're batting on such a good wicket.
Mr. Jagdeo, the Attorney General's office, just moments ago, issued a statement about Justice Cummings. And at least two attributes were pointed to in advocating for her. That is her competency and her professionalism. In your estimation, do you think that those are good attributes associated with Ms. Cummings?
Yeah, but I don't know Justice Cummings personally. I don't know. I've never seen a report of her record. So I assume that the Attorney General is privy to their record of service and the performance when he speaks of competence. That's what I'm assuming. But I don't know that. I was not given a copy of a report or, say from the JSC along the lines that I mentioned before, to say there are 500 cases heard, 300 decisions written, no outstanding decision for 5 years or 2 years, that sort of thing. Senior judge, that would make sense. So that's what you need to ask Mr. Williams now. How did he assess their competence and the professionalism? How did he? Because they're the ones suggesting these comments. Whatever I'm saying, I don't want to be critical of the person there. I'm just dealing with the principles. Yeah, so that's all. You're all getting away already? Okay, then, thank you. So,
I'm tired.
I see.
By the way, what do you say here? On the ground or on the ground?
On the ground.
Oh,
On the ground.